If you're buying a home in the next 90 days, watching this video will help make it as simple as writing your name. I've worked with hundreds of clients to buy their next home, and I can give you the tips, the tricks, and the things you must know to make the process as simple and smooth as possible. In this video, you will get the 90-day system that will help you buy your next home. Days 1 through 10, this is all about planning. What do I mean? Well, when I was a Boy Scout, I would never go on a hike without knowing my destination or having the appropriate supplies with me, my water, my stove, my backpack, my sleeping pad, etc. The same is true for your home purchase. You have to know where you're going and you have to have the right tools. Otherwise, the cart is before the horse and you will never successfully get where you want to go. Day 1, start with budget planning. That's right, our most exciting topic, but an absolute necessity for every single home buyer and homeowner. If you can't budget, then you should not be owning a home, period. So first, learn how to successfully write a budget and keep a budget. There's several methods you can use to try this out. You can track it on Excel. You could use QuickBooks, an online version, or you could even use the cash method. Whatever you feel good about, that's fine. Just make sure you can track and keep a budget. The big truth is the cost of housing is not going down. Every day it costs more to buy a house or to live on a day-to-day basis. So what does it really take to buy a home and what is it going to cost you? In a nutshell, there's 3 simple ways to understand if you can afford to buy a home and how much it's really going to cost you. First one is the 3X rule, meaning that if your salary is $75,000 a year, then you should buy a house that's no more than 3 times what that salary is. What does that mean? Well, that means $225,000 or less. Option number 2 is the 28-36 rule. You take your gross monthly income. If you make $75,000 a year, divide that by 12, and that's your gross monthly income. Then what you're going to look at that is you're going to say, I can only have my house be 28% of that amount. So for an income, a gross income of $75,000, that means your housing payment should be $1,750 or less. And then the 36% rule comes in place because all of your other expenses should exceed no more than 36%. So just look at it this way. If you have lots of car payments, if you have lots of credit card debt or other payments you're paying out every single month, and it exceeds the 36% rule, there's no way you're going to buy a house soon. And the last suggested way to identify if you could buy a home now is 25%. You want your house payment to be 25% of your total income you make every month. If you fall into one of those 3 processes or categories, then you're moving in the right direction to move forward and buy a home. Now, with a caveat, I'm not a lender. These are simple guidelines that I've used in my own life as I've looked to buy a home. A lender can give you the exact details and debt-to-income ratios you have to have in order to buy your next home. And just realize with FHA or VA loans, often they're a little bit more flexible on it because they recognize you may have a little more debt, but you have a solid job with a good income, and they might give you some more leeway on what you can afford in your next house. Once you know what your income is and what you can afford, the next key part of this process is your pre-approval. This is where the lender is actually going to tell you what you really can afford. No longer is it based on what you think you can afford, but actually what you can afford. Day number 2 is getting everything official. So you've created a budget, you think you're in line of what you want to afford, but now a lender will tell you actually what you can afford. Getting pre-approved is crucial and essential to your home buying process. Never look for a home until you've been pre-approved. When you get pre-approved, there's 4 basic loan types every lender will categorize you into. Number 1 is FHA. FHA is a great loan type. You have to have a minimum, usually around $620 to qualify for an FHA loan, and at a minimum, put about 3.5% down. Number 2 is a VA loan. VA is if you are a veteran. If you've served our country in the military in any capacity and you have VA benefits, then you qualify for VA loans. And VAs are fabulous loan types. They're 0 down loan options and have a much more flexible debt to income ratio. The third loan type is USDA loan. That's reserved for more rural housing areas. Now just know if you live in a city that's rural, but in a county that's fairly populous, you don't qualify for USDA because it's based off county demographics and designation. So if you live in a more rural county, then you will probably qualify for a USDA loan. USDA loans follow many of the same categories as FHA loans, but might give you a greater benefit to maximize in a rural community. Finally, the fourth option is conventional. Conventional loans are set aside for people with great credit, usually for people with credit over 680. It's a really good idea to go conventional, and if you have a greater down payment, good credit, then you should absolutely consider a conventional loan option. Finally, once you get designated with the loan type and what you qualify for, make sure you connect with your lender and find out what your total payment will be. That's going to include the principal every month, the amount of money that goes towards your loan payment. Then also your interest and taxes and insurance. And once you know those 4 numbers, then you will be able to have your total loan payment for your every month. Day 3 to 4, it's identifying your needs versus your wants. This is crucial. I had a brother that I helped buy a home, and he told me, Graham, I want a 3-car garage, I want a big lot, and I want a brand new home. That just didn't exist within the price range that he wanted. So we had a nice meeting where we discussed what are your wants and what are your needs. We did identify that he could get 2 of those items within his budget, but not all 3. And so we had to concede on some of his wants, but he absolutely got his needs in the buying process. When you create a list of your needs and your wants, you're going to get more clarity and more specificity in what you want in your home. And the more specificity you have, the better you're going to be in feeling confident on your next step forward. Day number 5 is all about planning your exit. What does that mean? Well, it means what is your current living situation and how long will it take for you to be able to transfer from that situation to another home? Because the reality is, if you want to find a home tomorrow, it very may well happen. But it won't happen unless you create a contingency plan to move out of your current place. Are you in a rental? Does it take you, are you in an annual lease you cannot break without an exorbitant cost? Are you in a month-to-month lease that you know you can buy something next 30 days? Are you living with your parents and you can leave anytime that you want to? Or are you in an existing home and you have to balance both buying and selling at the same time? The good news is every single one of those are viable options. We can help you create a contingency plan for. It doesn't matter if you're buying currently and selling. It doesn't matter if you're in a rental or lease agreement. And it doesn't even matter if you live at your mom or dad's house. Any single one of those are viable options and we can have a pathway forward for you. The key is your willingness to move forward, and we can absolutely create a plan for you to make it happen. Day 6 to 7 is assembling your team. And this may happen earlier on in the process as well, but making sure you've got a great lender, a great title company, and an excellent real estate agent you can trust and believe in, who's going to give you full disclosure, loyalty, obedience, confidentiality, and reasonable care. Really someone that you know, that you like, and that you trust will be crucial to helping you make the best decision possible when buying your next home. So how do you go finding the best real estate agent? Well, there's a few different methods you can look through. You can always ask your neighbor, ask your parents. So who's someone they worked with, they liked or didn't like through the real estate transaction process? Another great method is to check out your Google reviews. Does this agent or individual have good reviews, and have they been quick to respond to your client? Another fabulous method I always recommend is go interview that agent. Never go work with someone until you've actually taken some time to understand their processes, their systems, and their methodology. What are they going to do to help you on a daily basis to put you in the best position possible to be successful on your next home purchase? And finally, trust your gut. Just realize if you're ever going to get into a home, you ultimately have to step off the ledge and move forward. If you're always going to stand on the sideline, then you have to be content with renting. If you want to get into the game and buy a home, at some point, you're going to have to trust a professional or somebody who can help you move that forward to the finish line. So day 8, finding the right people to help make sure your transaction is smooth throughout the entire process. Who are those people I'm talking about? Well, in addition to your lender, in addition to your agent can also introduce you to some other key parties to the process, like a home inspector, maybe a radon company, maybe a methamphetamine inspector if you're worried about meth in the house. But they can connect you to great parties and individuals that can help make your buying process smoother. One thing to remember throughout the entire buying process is even though you have these great resources and professionals that you're relying on for help and guidance, the reality is you're always the one who's in the driver's seat, meaning the ball is always in your court and you get to make the decisions based off the guidance and information that your professionals that you trust give to you. Days 11 to 90, this is where it gets exciting. We're going to go into the homes and go start shopping and making offers. First step is making sure you know your schedule and when you're available to go look at houses, and then work with your agent to discuss when those times might meet up. Are you going to do open houses together? Are you going to do them on your own? Are you going to go to showings on a weekly basis with your agent? And how many showings are you going to go to in a week? It's a good idea to set a plan, put a goal together, and make specific timelines in your calendar when you're going to go look at homes. In connection with that, it's also important to get set up on an MLS search. You probably already have something set up on Zillow, which is fabulous, Redfin, which is great, but you also want to see the most recent and up-to-date homes. You're going to find those on your local MLS. Your agent can set you up on a home search. In addition to that, talk with your agent about how else you can find properties that might be coming on the market soon or even off market. If you have a very specific neighborhood that you want to live in, talk to your agent about maybe knocking doors. Talk to your agent about what can we do to target this specific area and community. The second part of this search process is making sure you have a realistic home search. What do I mean by that? Well, guys, if your budget's only $345,000, stop looking at brand new homes that are 5,000 plus square feet, because it won't happen and you'll only be disappointed through the process. Make sure you understand what the market truly is doing today and what your buying power will afford you today. I often like to go out with my clients in a window of a 2 to 3 hour block the very first time we go and see homes. And I like to go see 10 to 13 homes. I find on average, depending upon distance of homes, I can get through 3 to 4 homes in an hour. So if I can get through 3 to 4 homes in an hour, all of a sudden, within just a few hours, we see 12 properties, and we can identify very quickly what works for them and what doesn't work for them, and it helps us to narrow the search further when we're looking in the future. I bet you're a bit like me and you don't want to spend the rest of your life searching for the home of your dreams. If that's the case, then make sure you narrow your search right away from the get-go so you understand what you're looking for better. Visiting open houses is also a key part of home searching. On a Saturday, after a soccer game, go out and go look at some homes that might be having open houses. It's a great opportunity to see what other people are doing, and it's a great way to scope out neighborhoods and what they feel like and look like. While we're talking about neighborhoods, make sure you do your neighborhood research. If neighborhoods are critical to you and you've got situations where you have kids or family members you're taking care of that need a specific location, make sure you understand the pros and the cons of that area. What do I mean by that? Well, check out the schools. In addition to that, go to the neighborhood in the daytime, maybe when you see the house, but also go check it out at the nighttime. I find neighborhoods can be very different in the day than they are at night. If you're concerned about future construction, double check your local state websites about maybe future construction projects they have going on that could affect where you live and the traffic patterns that will be nearby. Amenities. How important is it to you that you're close to a gym, to your church, your school? Whatever amenities are important to you, make sure you understand how far away they are. The last thing you want to do is buy a home of your dreams, but only realize it's too far away after moving in. I recently had a client that was making over a 1.5 hour commute. Initially thought, this isn't going to be a problem. I don't care. I've got little kids, but guess what? As his kids began to age up and get into school, he wanted to be more involved in their lives, in their activities, their programs. It was really hard when he'd drive 1.5 hours each way. So ultimately, he ended up moving much closer to where his kids were at in school. Once you identify the homes of your dreams, you're going to make an offer. I find with my clients, I often see about 15 homes on average, and we're going to make 2 to 3 offers before we get the one accepted that's great. Now, you might say, well, Graham, how is that possible? This home was the only home that I loved. It was the home of my dreams. The reality is, stop it. Many homes can be a great fit for you and your family. There usually is never just one home. I tell every single buyer I work with, there is always another home. So we're going to put our best foot forward, make sure that we have our best terms negotiated that they're comfortable with, and then we go forward and buy that home. When you make an offer, a couple key things to think of or realize through this process. Number one, it always helps strengthen your offer if you've been to the home in person. Now, you might be saying, well, Graham, I'm moving from out of state and I don't live by the home and I can't go through the home. No problem. Work with your agent to do a virtual showing for you. If you have a good agent, they can help explain the details of the home and they can help make sure that the seller understands that you know the home, you feel confident with the neighborhood, and you're ready to proceed on an offer. What are the things we have to work on in an offer? Well, we often think price is the most important and the only thing that matters in an offer. While it's true price is incredibly important and probably the top of most people's list when they make an offer or receive an offer, there's also a lot of terms. And those terms are what make or break an offer. What am I talking about? It could be closing costs. How much are you asking the seller to pay in closing costs? Now, in some markets, you absolutely can get all of your closing costs covered and more. In other markets, you can get zero of your closing costs covered. So understand from your agent, what is the market doing today and what can I ask for based on my needs as a buyer? In addition to that, what are other terms that can make or break an offer? Timelines. What kind of timelines are associated with your transaction? A normal transaction is somewhere between 3 to 4 weeks, 21 to 28 days. That's a super normal transaction. But if you already got with your lender, you've already turned in all your documentation, and you're already desktop underwritten, meaning that you've given them pay stubs, tax documents, work verification, etc., then you can move that much quicker on the timeline. I have won transactions where we've been less on purchase price, but our timelines have hit what the seller needs, and that was more important to the seller, and we've won the deal because we can close in 14 days instead of 28 days. Also, what other terms to consider and be aware of in the process? Possession is one that's always a big deal for sellers. So think about it. If a seller is buying and selling, they've got to close on this transaction and get moved to their new home. Often, agents will say, my clients want to take possession at recording, which is super normal. But if that agent can find out what's most important to the seller, you're more likely to negotiate a better term for them and therefore get you into a home. For example, if you're renting and you don't get out for 30 days, you probably got some flexibility when you have to be out of your rental. Well, the seller, they may need to be out and into their new home within so many days. So if you can give them 6 days to move out and then you take the next 6 days to move in, it's a win for everybody. Yeah, you got into the house 6 days later than you wanted to, but you still got into the home. And what is the most important objective? To buy your next home. A couple other key terms to consider when making an offer is, do they have an HOA? If they have an HOA, who's paying the HOA assessment fee, and is there a new HOA fee when you transfer to that community? Just some things to think about. How much are they? Usually can be no more than 0.5% for a transfer fee, but is it the seller paying for it or are you paying for it as a buyer? And finally, just make sure it's a clean offer. Work with your agent to make sure it's spelled correctly, make sure names are corrected, make sure dates are correct. The cleaner the offer, the better chance you have to have your offer accepted. Again, it's all about putting your best foot forward. And if you're sloppy on your offer, an agent or the seller is more likely to think, this agent and buyer is probably going to be sloppy throughout the entire transaction. We don't want that to happen. Congratulations, you just went under contract. Now that we're under contract, what are your next steps? Well, first of all, it's the closing disclosure time period, meaning this is when the seller gives to you the seller's disclosures. Everything good or bad they know about the property. For example, we had a leak in the bathroom. It flooded the basement, but we fixed it, and this is what we did to fix it, and it happened this many years ago. Those are the kind of things you would include as a seller in the closing disclosure. You might also include things about your neighborhood, your HOA, or your home in general and the quality and condition of it. The closing disclosure is intended to give the buyer some information about the home. They're just meeting the home for the first time, and you've lived there for multiple years, and it's your job to disclose as much as possible. I always tell my clients, when in doubt, and your question, should I tell people about this or that? Always disclose. It's always better and keeps you more protected as a seller if you disclose more than less. Likewise, as a buyer, make sure you ask the questions. Often, states will already have a real estate purchase contract disclosure that's multiple pages long and will help guide you and the seller through what to disclose and how to understand that information. In the state of Utah, for example, the disclosure is like 14 or 15 pages. And you better believe most every single thing that someone is probably sued about in the past is covered on that disclosure. The closing disclosure period also is crucial because you will get a title report from title. The title report will tell you if there are any liens or encumbrances on the property. Why does that matter to you as a buyer? Well, because if there's liens and encumbrances on the property, we're asking them to be paid off before we close on the house, because title will not give you a clean and reputable title unless everything is clean on the title paperwork. Following your closing disclosure, the next step is your home inspection. That's where we're going to hire someone to dive into the details of your home and tell you the type of condition it is. Obviously, you can do your own visual walkthrough, but I always recommend getting an inspector in the house. They're going to spend 2 to 3 hours checking out every outlet, running the dishwasher, getting up into the attic, looking for leaks. They're going on top of the roof and they'll tell you the roof condition, and they'll then do a visual inspection of the foundation. Inspectors are critical to a better transaction. After you receive the inspection report, make sure you review it with your agent. You and your agent can determine what things are critical and what things are not super important to discuss further with the seller. And then you come up with a game plan to negotiate repairs or receive a monetary concession on your home purchase. After you get through the inspection process, you then move to finance appraisal. That's where an appraiser goes out and verifies the value of the home. A lender is watching out for their back as well, and they want to make sure that you are buying a home at a fair value and something that they can resell again in the future. Also, financing is a critical time for you to confirm all of your documents are locked and loaded and you're good to go on your home purchase. If anything changes financially in your situation, you're going to want your agent and the seller to know as soon as possible. In the state of Utah, the contract protects the buyer. If they financially can't perform on the contract anymore, then you can get out of the contract without ramifications. This is a great protection to you as a buyer to make sure that you are totally comfortable with the payment amount and the total purchase price of your home. The last 28 days have not been easy. There's been times where it's stressful and times where it's smooth sailing, but you're there. You're now going to the closing table. To make sure you prepare appropriately to close, what are the things that you need to know? First, your lender will send you a document at least 3 days before closing that will verify you understand the terms and conditions of your loan. This is kind of your final verification of what that loan's really going to look like. It's important you review it and you understand it. Now, just a side note, this is often after your financing appraisal deadline, so it's important throughout the entire process you stay connected to your lender so you understand what your rate is and what the terms are on your personal loan. Also, a loan, just so you know, in most cases are not variable. They are fixed loans that will last for 30 or 15 years, depending which loan option you choose. After the closing disclosure goes out, you're then going to go to the settlement table 3 days later. At that point, you go sign some documents and you become a homeowner. Important to note, when you go to the settlement table, every lender is a little bit different what title requires, but typically, I suggest my clients take 2 forms of ID. Those could be a driver's license, a Costco card, whatever will identify you as a person who you are. Take 2 forms of ID to give to the title officer. Often people ask me, when do I send over my down payment? Do I do it after I close or before I close? At the end of the day, either one works, whatever you're most comfortable with. I often tell people, if you're going to get if you're going to get wire instructions, then either A, title will give them to you at closing, and if that's the case, you go wire funds directly from your bank after closing's over, or they'll send you a secure email that you know is coming and your real estate agent knows is coming so that you know you won't be duped by wire fraud. Within about 24 hours of signing documents by both the seller and the buyer, you will become a new homeowner. Now, the only caveat to that is if you sign on a Friday, it won't be till Monday of the week following that you will become a homeowner. Sometimes, if everybody signs in the morning and meets the wire cutoff, usually before 2 p.m., then you can actually fund and record in the same day, meaning you can take keys and possession of your home even sooner. Once all the documents are closed, you've now become a new homeowner of your home. It's moving time. Time to pack up the moving truck and move everything into your new place. Just realize, as a seller, contractually, they are to leave the home in broom clean condition. Just know that may mean different things to different people. But if you walk into your house and it's absolutely disgusting, talk to your agent, because the seller contractually should leave the home in a condition where you can move in tomorrow and start living your dream in your new home. In this video, we've talked a lot about contracts, negotiations, and timelines. But what are the 10 crucial mistakes you need to know as a buyer? In this video, I will highlight the 10 crucial mistakes to avoid and to know as a buyer so you can get into your next dream home.